Sam Kephart. Decades ago, people were looking at a movie called Frankenstein, and it was at the time it was a horrible movie. I mean, it depicted things that was shocking to people, but not so shocking anymore.
No, and I actually remember, I'm 62, and I remember in the early 50s going to a movie as a kid, and actually I remember Boris Karloff, and they were black and white movies in those days,
yeah.
And we had 25-cent matinees.
Wasn't he from South Dakota?
Boris Karloff. And basically with Frankenstein, they took body parts, stitched someone else's arm to someone else's head to someone else's leg to somebody else's torso, put them all together, zapped it with lightning, big electrical charge, and brought it to life, and then you had this poor begotten miscreant creature that had some psychological problems.
Today he could run for president.
Yeah, well, in any event, we've substituted that Hollywood story that was on a macro level. Here you've got the big body, and now we're doing it on a micro level with what is called genetic modification. And you might say, well, that's a good thing. Well, it could be a good thing, but the problem is the FDA and certain corporate interests in the United States, like Monsanto being one of the primary ones, but not the sole one, they are doing research in what is called genetically modified corn, genetically modified wheat. There now is a new coming thing called genetically engineered milk. I haven't even gotten to the bottom of the chemistry of that one. And now most recently, genetically approved a new rice that was developed in the state of Kansas where they actually mix it with human genomes. Well, we don't know. The problem with all of this is you may understand the rice genome, you don't know whose cells are being brought into.
You're not saying it's a matter of what you're eating, but maybe who you might be eating.
Actually, Gordon, no, for real, who you're eating. And the problem is the human DNA that they're using to facilitate that new genetically modified brand of rice, the carrier, the human carrier in there, that's the boat that carries the transgene over, if you will. What is the background of that human gene? We don't know what traits or weaknesses in other words, the person that came from, are they more cancer prone? I don't know. Can you tell me?
Sounds to me like a story I read as a young child about the Tower of Babel, where humanity began building a tower to heaven, and God looked down and said, I don't think so. You wonder just if this is the new Tower of Babel.
Well, not only that, but you have to bear in mind that Monsanto and the other providers of genetically modified, let's just deal with corn for a minute. The seeds are designed so you plant them and then you have your crop and you get your yield and you have your harvest. But a lot of these seeds are being sold that won't reproduce. So a genetically modified corn, you have to go back and buy the next year's seed corn.
Yes.
You can't spin it off of, you can't keep seed corn. They're basically mules. So if you keep some of those ears of corn to use those kernels to create another crop, it won't work. I have a huge problem with this, and then that stuff is contaminating the non-GMO corn and the adjoining fields.
Yes, and that we've had those conversations in the state legislature in South Dakota about genetically altered alfalfa.
Right.
The problem is not so much that you might have to go buy the seed every year, but the contamination possibilities are horrific. We look at things that with genetically altered grains, they would be more susceptible, or they'd be susceptible to different kinds of viruses that traditional grains would have never been subject to. Mutations, and as that follows the food chain, you might have to get another sleeve for your jacket.
Well, now I'm going to create a darker image here. What if one of our enemies, say Russia or China or Iran, put their chemists to work looking at our genetically modified corn and came up with a strain of a virus or something that, because it's GMO'd and we don't have the diversity anymore, it can vertically go into the silo of all the crops that are under that strain that Monsanto puts out and literally wipe out a third or a half of our food crop.
Well, I have a huge problem with
I've
heard stories about China refusing to buy certain grain exports from the United States because they are...
For that reason.
Yes, that reason. Folks, it's a serious issue. And, you know, Sam and I enjoy these conversations, and we hope you do too, but this is serious stuff. This isn't imaginary like Frankenstein. This is real, today, present reality. Frightening stuff. We'll be back with more.